The following is intended for mature audiences only. Discretion is advised.
Did the FDA even exist when we were children?
No, the FDA started with the Obama administration.
It's like,
but like, hey besties, welcome back to yet another episode of Childlike at Best with Mike Valdes. And guess what, chicken butt? I am still the second part of that title. Today's guest is my buddy and one half of the very awesome podcast Growing Up Christian, Sam Shipman. Sam is a really, really awesome dude. I actually met him through doing the podcast of his called Growing Up Christian, and it is a Christian-based podcast where essentially we talk about how we grew up evangelical and what that has done to our lives as we've grown older and things like that. And I thought that it would be really fun to have him to come to this podcast and just talk about nostalgia in that way, because in a weird way, I kind of am doing the same thing, just a little more lighthearted. And in fact, this episode is a really good one because I never really got to talk about Growing Up Christian that much. So I got to do that with Sam, and that was really fun. So you might get to know a little bit more about me and how I grew up. You might also get to feel like you aren't alone if you grew up in that scenario as well. And I really think that you guys are going to love this episode. But before we get into the episode, I just want to do some housekeeping. Please make sure that you're subscribed and hitting that bell notification so you can get new episodes every single week on YouTube. Also, if you're listening on audio, that's completely awesome as well. Please make sure that you're telling your friends and leaving 5 stars and nice comments, because honestly, that is really going to help us get to the new and noteworthy section of iTunes and Spotify, all that stuff. And I want all of my besties to feel like they were part of something from the ground level. Also, if you want to support the show, go to childlikewonder.co and get some Childlike Wonder merch. There's an amazing collection, a Viewmaster collection. There's some church merch collections. There's a shirt with my face on it. So many different things that you can get. And if you just want to support me, you can totally do that too. You can subscribe to my Instagram at Mike Valdes or my TikTok at official Mike Valdes. You can get a lot of music there, comedy bits, all kinds of stuff. Anything is helpful. Trust me. You don't have to spend money to help people in this industry. All you have to do is just follow, subscribe, tell friends. There's a lot of really easy ways to help people. So, with all that being said, let's get into today's episode. Without further ado, please enjoy my episode and my conversation with Sam Shipman of Growing Up Christian. I'm so excited to have you on to finally talk to you about growing up and all that stuff. Because you have a podcast. You have a podcast about growing up Christian, and that's something that I don't really get to talk about very much on this podcast. Because I also
imagine
grew
it
up
doesn't
Christian.
come up a ton.
Yeah, but it's fine that it doesn't come up a lot. But it's just it's nice to know that there's people in your tribe, So,
yeah.
And
there's a way
really...
you learn to talk to normal people without just letting them know that you've been traumatized. So it's
of course,
well,
and that's what we in the church call you normies. We call you normal people.
Yeah, we code switch.
Yeah, we code switch for you people. But yeah, so let's just start off with the first question, which is, where did you grow up?
Where did I grew up in a fun little place called Cape Cod, Massachusetts. That's Cape Cod's not a town; it's an area.
I thought it was just a potato
Florida.
Chip brand.
Oh, it's where they're made, and also it's the best potato chip. Can we just take a quick pivot?
I agree.
The crunch,
I like
the flavors.
I like the crunch, man. It's the crunch. Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
I'd say it's the original kettle cooked chip. I don't have any evidence to support that, but I'm going with it.
But yeah, so you grew up homeschooled, which is so weird. I need to know what that was like.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So for me, it was between my parents homeschooled me because they wanted to provide me with what they called a good Christian education.
Sure.
And that is if you're
only
homeschooled
something your
for
mom
that
can
reason,
provide.
It's in public school was going to teach about things like evolution, and we could only learn about evolution from the perspective of that it was very wrong. So we had I don't know how much of this. I feel like anything I say, I'm going to also have to explain depending on the
you
people
might not
listening,
have to because
Answers in Genesis is the Ken Ham and his whole thing is all about not only is within Christianity, for anyone who needs to know, is you'll have multiple perspectives on how old the earth is and whether or not evolution is something that could have happened. And within conservative Christianity, by and large, especially evangelicalism, you're going to find the earth was created in 6 literal days by God 6 to 10,000 years ago. And then they go through all these gymnastics to explain why dinosaurs aren't around anymore and why the fossil record appears older than it is, but it's not. And actually dinosaurs lived with people because it says that God created all things on such and such a day. And that's what I was taught. I was taught that humans at one point lived with dinosaurs, and then for some reason the dinosaurs didn't make it. And there was a lot of weird explanations on how that could happen.
My childish imagination when you said that dinosaurs would live with people was not they lived in the same cave or they lived in the same forest. I thought a guy had a raptor as a friend and they would sleep on bunk beds. He would tuck himself into bed. The raptor would tuck himself into bed, and they'd just be all right, see you later, Claw-E or whatever your name is.
Yeah. I actually had little books that would show
wow, dinosaurs weren't real.
Yeah, that would. I honestly think that might have been better.
Sure,
but it would be here's this it would it'll show humans and dinosaurs like fucking Dinotopia type shit.
Yeah,
except for they didn't live together in harmony. They were wild beasts that they had to avoid. But yeah, I mean that's
the only
it's
book
weird to think about being taught that, honestly.
The only book like that I remember, which this is more just cool than it is anything else, is just it would show the dinosaur and then the size of an average person. So it would be oh, this is how much bigger the dinosaur would be, or this is, roughly it would be around the size of your ankle, or that kind of thing, which I think is a little different than what you're talking about, but
much different because it's this is what it would be like to scale. And then the other one, so it was in the book of Job, there's reference to the Leviathan and the behemoth, and Ken Ham was all and those are actually dinosaurs, because if you read the description, it's basically describing a dinosaur, where that shows you that people were aware of these creatures because they lived with them. And you're just that's a bad way to do science, is to just infer things so simply. But this guy built a creation museum out in Tennessee or some shit like that, to scale Ark of the Noah's Ark, and
wow,
the shit's wild. You could just, if you Google or YouTube the Creation Museum, you could probably find some good videos of people walking through it and just shitting all over it. But there's some weird stuff there. Casey and I want to go there and just report back on our experience for an episode of the podcast. Because
for the listener that may not know, Casey is also the co-host of Growing Up Christian, which Sam is also the co-host of. Yeah.
And they were building that when we were in college. So just a quick snapshot of my life is homeschooled. I went to private Christian school through 2nd grade. Then we were homeschooled until I finished high school. And then I did a year of community college, but that was just to save some money and get ready to go to Liberty University, the most Christian university in the world.
And
that's
and
the
were
one
you
that,
okay, were you okay learning about evolution for a year in community college, or
yeah,
what?
well, luckily I didn't want to be swayed by the world, so I chose not to take any classes that could potentially cause problems. So
Yeah.
what did I
You're just
take? I
like-
took like business.
just like
I
a
took,
PE, and they're like, all right. You're just like a PE, and they're like, all right, we're going to run a mile. And during this mile, we're going to talk about how evolution is real and creation is not.
yeah. No, but I was a total fucking nerd in community college, man. I was like, that was my chance. Like I was everything I was trained for boiled down to that 1 year of community college. I was raised to tell people about the gospel of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Right.
And for 18 years, I went to college. I guess it was the summer I turned 18. So, for 18 years, I was trained for this. And, I didn't let a moment pass by. Anytime I got the opportunity to tell people what I was doing, I'm going to Liberty University. I'm going to study the Bible. And one of the kids that I ended up being friends with, he would just call me Pastor. His nickname for me was Pastor.
Interesting.
And it was, I was gun ho, man. I was all in, balls to the wall. Like my whole experience in youth group was like, I want to be the one that people go, yeah, that kid's on the right track.
Yeah.
And some of that was approval seeking. I definitely sought approval from like the leadership, whoever that was. Definitely my youth pastor for a while. And I used to get bummed because like you realize quickly that like the kids who get the attention from the youth pastor are the ones that the youth pastor knows aren't going to hurt his overall numbers after graduation. We're like who stays and who doesn't. And there were a lot of kids who were like definitely not feeling it. And he spent most of his time trying to like build a relationship with them. And I'm like, I'm the one who gives a fuck about all of this the most. And I feel like I'm just ignored. And that bothered me a little bit.
Yeah.
And,
I can relate to that for sure. I mean, I certainly didn't feel ignored by my youth pastor, but it certainly did feel like, I want to make a shirt, because I have a lot of church merch. In fact, I'm wearing my church merch. It says church camp on it. Yeah. And, but I want to make a shirt that just has a teddy bear on it, and it says,
where did the pastor touch you?
No, it says, which that's great, but I just don't think like people would actually wear it.
No, probably not. Show me on this bear where your youth pastor touched you. Probably isn't a great shirt.
It's a teddy bear, and it says, my testimony's so much cooler than I am. And
that's good, man.
Yeah, and the reason why it's a bear is because you bear your testimony and like all that shit. But anyway, it's like, but that's kind of the truth, where like kids would tell their testimonies or whatever, and it was like, oh well, like this kid used to be cool, and or like and then he like met Jesus, and which like, to be fair, and I'm sure you were the same growing up too. When I was a kid, that really was like the bad life. Like when kids would say like, guys, I had a joint and I smoked it, like my jaw would be on the floor, like, no, but then they would be like, but then I found Jesus and he's the only weed I need, like
and I recommitted my life to Christ and got baptized in the neighbor's pool.
Yeah. Okay. And like when I was a kid, and I'm sure you as well, you were gung-ho about it. So you're just like, yeah, like absolutely, that's the way it's supposed to be. So this is another thing too, and I'm not sure if you went through it, but like a lot of kids, it was almost like trauma Olympics, where it was just like, well, you think you had it bad, like I did heroin in the car, like like
and I shot heroin straight up my dick hole, and
like,
Jesus
and it's
Christ,
like,
man,
dude, you're 14, like how is that possible? Like but
in my youth group, it was like we did a couple of testimony nights, and there were some. What's wild is like everyone at that time was like, even if they probably like you knew that some of the kids didn't really care that much, and they still did it, and it
was for the free pizza and the basketball. That's all really anybody
and the
cared
attention,
about.
and you would give it your testimony. But any kid that grew up in the world we did, that was like, you didn't experience anything, like especially homeschool kids. I would say like 80% of testimonies for high school kids was like, you know, I was in a bad place. I was suicidal. I thought about killing myself. And then, you know, I got serious about reading the Bible, and now, you know, Jesus saved me from that. I don't want to kill myself anymore. And you're like, even then sitting there, I think I even gave like, I don't think I got that specific, but it was just like, I was depressed, and then Jesus was like, great. So like, I'm good now.
Right.
Wasn't. You just pretend, because if Jesus doesn't fix that, then Jesus sucks at his only job.
Right.
So you have to like fake it for, you know, Jesus' sake, I guess. But I'm like, you just are like, there's no chance that like the depression rate for this youth group is 80%. Like,
it's true.
It's just not that high. It's not that high.
Well, and not to mention, you have to take this into consideration. You might not know this as much because you didn't go to high school with like a bunch of high school kids, but like
they all wanted to kill themselves too. No,
it's not. Oh. I mean, you're right, but when you're in high school, everything means so much to you. Like that is your entire world, and
for sure.
And you and it sucks because you will never realize it until you get out of high school how little that matters. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and anybody can tell you, and you will not believe them. And it isn't until the week that you are out of high school that you're like, oh, wow, that was just a whole hunk of bullshit, wasn't it? Yeah. Like, because it was. Like,
it's true. And all the stuff that like, so, and I think there are, the parallel is like, at the end of the day, growing up the way I did, you're still just, you might have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh boy, indoctrinated. You might have been indoctrinated, but you also like are just still a kid. So
of course,
whatever like typical cringe behaviors that teenagers have, it's the same. It's the same percent. It's just like, instead of having your problems are they're just different, but it's just as bad.
Yeah.
So I look back on it, I'm like, God damn, that was weird. But like at the moment, in the time, you're just like, and in comparison to some of the things I see other, like my real experience with watching high school drama unfold from like a 30,000 foot view was when my foster son was in high school. And I'm like,
right.
You listen to high school kid conversations and you're like, oh my God, I actually wasn't that much worse than all of you. So this is encouraging.
Dude, do you remember having a phone in high school? Like you only called your mom and that was it.
Yeah.
Like,
I got to use my parents' phone when I would go out after I got my license. My parents were like, you can now take one of our phones, because we still had a landline at home. So it was like, we could take one of my parents. So I had, all my friends had phones. And I had a piece of paper in my wallet with all my friends' numbers on it.
Oh, nice. I had
felt like a nerd. When I had to take that out and be like, oh, let me call. So I take it out of my wallet. It's all like ripped up. It looks like the fucking like some map from National Treasure that Nicolas Cage found with the singed edges and shit.
That's
and you're just
so
like,
great. Yeah,
you can barely read it anymore. You're like holding it up to the light and like trying to figure out whose number is whose.
I was lucky in that I had the official phone of Warped Tour, the Sidekick, the one that it would flip, it would go, and then you would just type like yeah. I knew what sidekicks were because I knew a girl who she did something with did ASL and had a lot of deaf friends, and I thought it was age, sex, location.
American Sign Language. Holy shit, I forgot about ASL. That was what you would type to random strangers on Instant Messenger?
Yeah. Whoops.
Oh my God.
You just write ASL on Instant Messenger and they're like, well, yes, I am deaf. You want to sign? It's like, why would we sign when we're typing?
Can we pivot to signing on to other people's instant messengers and starting drama?
Yeah, let's do that.
I would sign into it. Like, I would go to a friend's house and sign into, like, they had the history and password saved or whatever. And I would sign into other people's accounts and, like, talk to them. That was desperate teenage me. Like,
oh, yeah.
Sometimes you're like, hey, just using so-and-so's account. He's a friend of mine. What's up? And then you just start chatting it up and you're like, why am I already hard? I literally just said hi. It's like
my favorite.
The prospect of a woman saying hi to me,
dude,
was enough to make me come in my pants, pretty much.
My best friend, dude, has the funniest story about this. Just thinking about it, I wish he was here to tell it, man. But like, I'm gonna get this story wrong because he's so good at telling the story. But he used
call
to
him right now. Put him on speaker.
I'm getting close to, but he might not. He might not answer because he has kids and like a life.
We'll edit it out.
Yeah, we'll edit it out. No, he Anyway, he would instant message people, but like random people, and it would always be people that were like wanting to have like cyber sex or phone sex or whatever. And
cyber?
And he would use that opportunity to tell them about Jesus.
Yes, I love that. And amazing.
And he would print all of these conversations out. So he would like I guess he like wanted to have like visual proof with God that he like would turn people from having a boner into having a boner for salvation. And so his mom one day opens one of his drawers and finds this. And dude, she's like, I can't believe you. You're so disgusting. And he's like, but I was talking to them about Jesus. And it's funny hearing him tell the story, and then it's even funnier hearing his brother tell the story because he's like, dude, it was hilarious hearing him like crying and be like, I was talking to them about Jesus. That innocence, man, like that, like,
oh yeah,
you know, like you didn't know what you were doing, you know, and like all anybody needed to say was hello, and you had a freaking boner. Like that's just,
yeah. If a girl smiled at you, you're like, I think she likes me.
Part of it is because you're in seventh grade anyway, you know, but because like, you know, when you're that young, your body's exploding. So like, you know, I always say this, but like, you know, as when I was growing up, when like the pastor would always be like, to the girls would always be like, oh, well, you know, watch what you wear because that, you know, might lead a man to stumble. And I've always been the kind of guy that's like, hey, bro, wear whatever you want, because at the end of the day, if that guy stumbles, that's on him. That has nothing to do with you, has everything to do with him, you know, and
very progressive in you.
And the truth is, if you're in 8th grade, a woman can be wearing a spacesuit and you'd have a boner. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter what she's wearing.
And then not only that, you would realize later, and you had an inconvenient fetish for women in spacesuits. You'd be like,
yeah.
That would be really weird when, you know, someone finds your like search history for spacesuit porn.
Yeah. It's true. Girl, what you working with? Back that NASA, you know?
Yeah, back that NASA. Amazing.
This is so stupid. So I kind of want to pivot a little bit.
Let's pivot.
Because it does still tie into like church and things like that. Because I did want to tell you this story that I've never shared. But what were like your fandoms growing up? So like, what were the things? What were the things you were allowed to watch on TV?
Yeah,
like,
dude. So
like,
what's funny is like, Boy Meets World was one of the only shows that I remember really watching. I mean, outside of like anyone could watch, like cartoons and stuff. I was like SpongeBob, Rocko's Modern Life, Hey Arnold, shit like that. Like,
even then, there's stuff that goes over your head, man. He worked at a sex hotline.
I know he did. And then
Yeah.
there's like that, he would like try to get by that giant hippo and he'd like
Mhm.
get sucked up between her butt cheeks and then shot
Yeah.
up between her tits. And then she'd suck him up her nose and shoot him off into space.
Yeah. Or
There's, like,
that,
some
or
weird shit there.
the villain, how about the villain from Powerpuff Girls that was only tits? Like she was like,
I don't
just...
remember that.
I do.
But what's so funny is, dude, the stuff that I was never really allowed to watch was like a lot of other Disney Channel stuff, like like Sister, Smart Guy,
anything involving black people.
I know. I just named 2 shows that have.
That's so horrible. That's definitely not what it was, but.
But then there's like, I knew people who were watching like Seventh Heaven, and that was like a Christian family, but I wasn't allowed to watch Seventh Heaven because like that snot-nosed brother with who always like got in the problem.
Because you didn't like that he was like getting a good testimony.
Yeah, he was working on having a great testimony when he became a traveling preacher 20 years later.
This is a perfect segue, right? Like Christianity and like the traumas of it. What were your favorite snacks growing up?
Oh my God. All right. High C fruit snacks were amazing. I like the High C brand. Also,
okay. They don't exist anymore, right?
I don't know, but they were a staple in my house. The things that we had in my house were, we always had those High C fruit snacks. Gushers, fruit roll-ups, fruit by the foot.
You were one of those
Dunkaroos.
families, huh? This was like such a treat when you were lower middle class, having a kid cuisine.
A kid cuisine. Are
Do you
those
remember
like
those?
Those are the ones. They're frozen meals.
Yeah. It's a frozen.
I did that for anyone
TV
listening.
dinner.
I did the motion of you peeling open that flap.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. We're on video, so they'll see it. But yeah. But yeah, I mean, but yeah, it would have that, and like really the only reason why kids liked it was because it had like that really shitty brownie in it, but it was good because like it was the only source of nutrition or dessert that you ever had in your whole life. So at least until that point.
I forgot about those.
Really?
Lunchables
That's
were
funny.
something I always wanted, and my mom wouldn't buy because it's like, she's like, I'm not going to spend $38 on a box of Lunchables when I can literally it's like crackers and some essentially Spam that you could put between it.
Dude, why was the ham always wet? Is my question.
Soaked.
It was so like wetter than a Christian on their wedding night. Like
it's to save money. They literally just like pump it full of water. It's like,
yeah, I mean, it was disgusting, like wet and slimy. By the way,
you bite into it, and just like squirts into your eye like a clam.
Dude, do you remember Squeeze-Its?
Oh fuck yeah, dude! I fucked with Squeeze-Its. I actually allowed to. I love that. Like, there's so many things that were like considered like unhealthy, or that were like I feel like our childhood and the snacks that were involved in it were like. Did the FDA even exist when we were children?
No, the FDA started with the Obama administration.
It's like,
but like,
how is all of this fun? But Squeeze-Its were like, hey, what if we took like a bunch of sugar and put it in water?
Yeah,
and then
turn that water blue.
Just made it purple. Yeah,
yeah.
So with Squeeze-Its, because you had that little Squeeze-Its had like the faces on them and shit, right?
Yeah, it was a thing that looked like a dick, and it had a face that was going. So it 100% looked like you were jerking someone off into your own mouth. But
the face of someone who just got a big fat load right into it. It's like
dude, what were we into? And then
I would take like screw that little like because you would screw the cap off and it had like it was kind of like that U shape, and me and my brother would like turn them into like air fighters, like they would make them alien spaceships and fly them around. But then we would also take them and like put them on our Squeeze-It and use them as like visors. And use our Squeeze-Its as action figures.
Homeschool kids are just like real kids. We used to do the same stuff.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so glad that just transcends childhood.
Yeah, that just at the end of the day, there's only so many ideas when you're a kid, you know.
And really, spaceship and visor are the only two possibilities for Squeeze-Its.
No, we would always do that. Like we would do that, and we would play like football. Like we would do like the like paper football, but we would use the Squeeze-It thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
3 ideas now. I missed out on that one.
Yeah, we would do stuff like
Squeeze-Its.
that. But yeah, dude, Squeeze-Its were nuts. I mean, granted, it's all like part of the what we call in this podcast the radioactive sludge era of food. But like,
Yeah. What's crazy?
I mean,
dude,
our ketchup was
Capri
green,
Suns.
dude. Like, like
Yeah.
our ketchup was green, dude. Like, what do you expect? Like, we're all overweight and unhealthy.
Yeah.
Like,
Dude, I wanted Capri Suns when I was a kid. 'Cause I'd go to a friend's house and they would have Capri Suns, and then like they were awesome. Like,
of course,
juice in a bag. It was I mean, it looked like an IV drip bag. But you got to drink out of it. And my mom would be like, we're not getting Capri Suns. That's just sugar water. And it's like, what the fuck do you think Squeeze-Its are?
we're getting Sunny D because it's healthy.
Yes, Sunny D. I love Sunny D, man.
Yeah.
Do you think Squeeze-It would pass like
No, the answer is
Yeah.
no.
No,
Whatever your question is, the answer is no.
No one would call a dick-shaped drink a Squeeze-It anymore.
Unless your question was, do you think Squeeze-Its could be used for coolant on an automobile? Then I would say yes. But other than that, the answer is no.
I would like to be in like the room where people were trying to figure out what to call those. It's
right.
Like,
well, we can't call them dick squeezers.
Yeah.
Let's see. Can we call them jisms? Can we call them jisms?
Jisms.
No, I think that's a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
Jisms. He's coming everywhere. Like that would just be that
For
would
kids.
be the commercial. Yeah. The commercial.
It's a bunch of
the
kids
just like I win.
holding up. It's a bunch of kids like holding up the Squeeze-Its away from their mouth, like squirting it into their mouth, shaking their head from side to side in slow motion.
Yeah. While the thing is like
going back and forth with it. It's just like, oh, look how far I can. It's like when you go to like one of those Japanese restaurants where they like make the food in front of you and they have that little guy with the sake in it, and they start out close to your mouth and they go farther and farther away. It's like
a
commercial of that with kids and Squeeze-Its.
Or what my favorite pastime was when I was a kid, which was
Hibachi.
pee at a urinal and walk back and see how far.
Yeah. How far back can you walk?
How many times did you get caught by someone and you're at the end of the bathroom? I'm losing it right now. This is so funny.
Never.
How many times
I actually never got caught. I wouldn't do it in public restrooms.
I got caught by the principal once. I was literally like on the sink, like just peeing into the urinal. Like, I mean, it had to have been 6 feet. I mean, it was wild. I mean,
world record stream.
Yeah, world record.
It sucks that you were underage. Otherwise, we would have been able to get it on video.
Yeah, that was the only problem was that I was underage.
I feel like I need to clarify that it's not a gray area.
Of course. And we also need to clarify that we're kidding. Yeah. I mean,
there's already several things I've said where I'm like, do we need just assume everything I say that's awful is a lie, and that will make things easier for me later. Perfect.
Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it in the edit. I'm editing everything out.
There's just no podcast left.
There's just no podcast. It's just the intro, and then it goes straight to the credits. What about cereal? What were your favorite cereals growing up?
Oh my God. I went through another thing, dude, this is the inconsistency. It's also just a lack of like pre-internet era and people knowing generally what's like really just not good for you and what's good for you and where that line is. But cereal was like, it was like Reese's Puffs, because it's like, oh, you can have a Capri Sun, but you can eat an entire box of cereal for breakfast. And also, I don't think I drank water between the ages of 12 and 17.
Me
I lived
neither.
on
We were all
apple
so
juice
dehydrated.
and milk. Apple juice and
Yeah.
milk. Gross. But
Yeah.
also apple juice probably, it's like we couldn't really have soda in the house, but like I could drink 1,000 calories and 600 milligrams worth of sugar from apple juice. And
You're absolutely right.
It's not different. And apple juice is obviously not healthy because it has the word apple in it.
Yeah.
But that during that time, people were like, no, juice is good for you. Lucky Charms, Reese's Puffs. I liked apple cinnamon Cheerios a lot.
Sure, me too. That was one of my favorite varieties of Cheerios is apple cinnamon Cheerios.
I would argue the only good variety of Cheerios, unless
you think? Okay.
Unless plain Cheerios, if you can't really knock plain Cheerios, but
by plain, do you mean plain or Honey Nut?
Oh, plain. Honey Nut's Honey Nut.
Okay. No, I know. It's just some people think that plain is Honey Nut for some strange reason. So I always have to ask. Because
my
I
daughter eats Honey Nut Cheerios every morning for breakfast, and she's 7. That's her favorite cereal.
It's a great cereal. It's great. It's a great compromise cereal because it's like just enough sweet to like make a kid be like, I'm having something fun for breakfast, but it's also like good and like good for your cholesterol and heart health.
Yeah,
and,
it's
like,
perfect for us 1 foot in, 1 foot out kind of people, you know?
Yeah. And like, but yeah, apple cinnamon is so freaking good, man. There used to be, this was like early 2000s for the Olympics. They made this cereal called All-Star Cheerios, and it was frosted Cheerios, Honey Nut Cheerios, and apple cinnamon Cheerios all mixed into one bag.
No way.
And it was
you have
my
all the
favorite
insider
cereal
information on this stuff. I love how much you know about all of this.
I know
perfect.
too much. I know too much.
I needed to know that, and I didn't know that I needed to know that. And I will tell people as though I knew it.
Yeah, to this day, that's my favorite version of Cheerios. But it hasn't been made in a long time. Yeah, it hasn't been made up in a long time. If you can make it, you just need to buy 3 boxes of cereal.
Yeah, it's like when Chance the Rapper has like several other artists on his tracks. It's like I didn't know I needed this. I didn't know I needed Chance the Rapper and Kirk Franklin together.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, one of the things that we like to do on this podcast is we like to review a box of cereal. And usually I like to choose a box of cereal that has something to do with my guest in some way, shape, or form. So I spoke with my sponsors over at General Mills. Now, by sponsor, I mean that I like them and I buy all of their products. And by spoke to, I mean that I tweeted them repeatedly and they never got back to me. So the cereal that I chose for you is Cinnamon Toast Crunch Lucky Charms Mix.
Oh my God.
Have you ever seen this?
I've never seen that.
So this is like, I mean, this is on some limited edition shit, Sam. Like this is wild. So
did you buy that 7 years ago and you've been holding on to it for the perfect occasion?
Yeah, it actually, believe it or not, cereal boxes are like my wine. Like
you age them, you mean?
Yeah, I whip them out for the right time. But this cereal,
1993 box of Lucky Charms. You open it and you're like getting the aromas and
yeah, it's just the body is so great. No,
it's full bodied box of cereal.
So this is definitely I don't think you could still get this in stores anymore. It did come out this year though. Can you
tell me the sell by date on that box, please?
Yeah. You know what's funny? Check this out. It says best used by no date, which is scarier than knowing what the date is.
That's how they do with limited edition.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not telling you the
That's
date.
how confident they are it's going to sell out that quickly. Yeah. Like we don't even need an expiration date.
And they're laughing their ways to the bank because I'm on the podcast talking about it.
The problem is Lucky Charms and Cinnamon Toast Crunch have different expiration dates, so they just said, fuck it.
You're absolutely right. Now, here's one thing that I wanted to say about this cereal, which
ultimately,
of course,
Lucky Charms marshmallows are already expired.
kind of, but not really. I mean, Marbits kind of taste expired for sure. Yeah. But essentially, like, one thing I will say that's positive about this, it feels like this cereal was reading my diary, because it's very much exactly what you would think. Like, it's Cinnamon Toast Crunch with marshmallows from Lucky Charms in it. Like, it's like literally like a kid's version of like what they think trail mix is.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
oh, that's what it is. So there's none of the Lucky Charms cereal pieces in it, or is there?
So there are Lucky Charms pieces in it, but it's also Cinnamon Toast Crunch and marshmallows as well.
God,
but
I want to
here's
try that so bad.
But here's the thing, and this is what makes it different. The pieces, because you know how like the pieces from Lucky Charms that aren't marshmallows taste like shit.
They taste like frosted Cheerios, and I'll stand by that. I've always
really. I think they kind
Cheerios.
of taste. I think they kind of taste cardboardy, but by themselves, to be fair, by themselves. When you have it together, it's a magical thing, not to use that word, lightly, but these are cinnamon coated. So it literally tastes like Cinnamon Toast Crunch anyway. So that's kind of like the great thing about it. Now, the reason why I chose this for you is for a myriad of reasons. One of them being that Lucky Charms is a very astrological cereal. It is a cereal that I would assume people that are into astrology believe. They believe in the horseshoes and the blue moons and the Sagittarius, whatever. And Cinnamon Toast Crunch is very like 0 to 60 and all that stuff. Now, this in the weirdest way possible, and I'm going to do some gymnastics here, but this is true.
Which is exactly what I would want, because that's what Christianity essentially is. It's mental gymnastics.
It's so funny that you say that. This cereal reminds me of church. And here's the reason why.
And we are going to church together right now.
This cereal reminds me of church, because two things that you think should never be together and would never work somehow found a way. They somehow found a way to be into one box, to make their way into one bowl and into my heart. And
it's like Christian porn.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think we can't review this cereal because we're Zoom conferencing, so we can't really eat this cereal. You can, of course, recreate it yourself. It's not like impossible to do it. I think it's a great mix personally. But one thing that I thought would be really fun is if you, as Sam, I don't know if did you go to school for youth ministry? What did you go to school for?
I was a biblical studies major.
Okay, so as a biblical studies major, I would like for you to give us a word, as they call it, about Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Lucky Charms. And you know what? I actually have a couple of things here that I want to put on here. I think it'll just make it a little easier. If we could just get the band to come in, that'd be great. Just marshmallow.
Oh my gosh, where do I go from here? I gotta tap into my old roots. I wasn't much of a pastor type, but church.
Yeah.
Church. I've really appreciated you all being with me today, hearing the word from the Lord. I want to talk to you about Cinnamon Toast Crunch and this Lucky Charms mix. I don't know if you guys have ever had it, but I think it's a perfect way to close today's sermon. See, the Bible talks about lukewarm Christians. And you can have one foot in the world and one foot out of the world. You can't serve two masters. Jesus says you can't serve two masters. And I'm here to tell you that trying to mix Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Lucky Charms together into one bowl is like serving two masters. It can't be done. I'm sure it's delicious. I'm sure Every moment of it, every bite you take in the world, in this moment, is delicious. But what's it doing to your soul? It's a compromise. And we don't compromise here at Faith Community Church. I want you to think about that as the worship band plays us out.
Marshmallow, marshmallow medleys. Here I am, ground cinnamon. You pour your love and sugar on me. Here I am, ground cinnamon. You pour your love and sugar on me. Just the Spanish church. Aquí yo soy. Canela. Queremos tu amor de azúcar. This is great. I love it, man. That's great. That was fun.
I wasn't expecting to have to improv and tap into that, but
yeah, man. Well, at the end of the day, like, I wasn't just gonna leave you out to dry and like make you do a whole sermon without being a worship band or something, you know? We're talking about.
I need a box of that. So I have all my stuff. I need a box. The front of that.
You know what's so funny is like, you know, and it's kind of the. You take some and you lose some when it comes to this podcast. At least when I started, it was in person. So, it was great because it was in person. And one of the things that I would do was that when I would do this cereal review, we would literally be eating the cereal and I would give them the cereal to take home. And, you know,
I would have
like
flown to Florida for that. I would have.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. I mean, if you really want this, I can mail it to you. Like, I mean, it's something that can be done, you know? But yeah, like, because of the pandemic and like things like that, I'm able to talk to people from all over the world, which is beautiful and it's great. But at the same time, like certain parts of the podcast we can't do because we're Zoom conferencing and, you know, all that stuff. So, but yeah, it is something that like, man, I wish I was able to give the person like their box of cereal. So that way, when someone's like, why do you have a box of Wendy's Frosty cereal? Like, which is a real cereal, by the way.
Unreal. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I have. All right. I want you to name two other exceptionally niche cereals that you know for a fact I don't know about right now.
Okay. I'll do you one better. Check this out. So this right here is my bed frame. Okay. Listeners of this podcast, if you want the scoop, watch this on YouTube because I'm never going to do this again. This is my bed frame.
I thought it was a closet behind you.
No, it's my bed frame. So as I lift up this camera, you can see all of these are cereal boxes. So I have Batman cereal, Joker cereal, drumstick cereal, you know, the ice cream drumstick. Kiss.
I'm thinking chicken drumsticks, but that's better for
Kiss
sure.
the Demon cereal. This cereal is from Parks and Rec right here.
Whoa.
It's Sweetums cereal. It's just a bag of marshmallows. It's awesome.
Yeah, Sweetums. That was that the company that Paul Rudd's character who had Sweetums?
Yeah, Paul Rudd.
Okay.
Yeah. And so Elvira cereal, Good Guys cereal from Chucky, a few other Lucky Charms variants, Slimer.
It's amazing.
Now here's where it gets weird. Here, right over here, we have the aforementioned Frosty cereal, Wendy's Frosty cereal, and right next to it is Cosmic Brownies, Little Debbie's Cosmic Brownies cereal. So yeah, I've got
crazy.
There's some weird.
Look at all those.
There's some weird stuff that's out there, man.
Did you buy those online, or did you find them like in a grocery store?
I found them in a grocery store. Grocery store. And some of them I've been lucky enough, like for example, Quaker, last Christmas, they sponsored the podcast. So I actually got some Captain Crunch for free and like stuff like that. So it's nice when companies, you know, help out. General Mills is never going to sponsor me for some reason, even though I buy all of their products. It's so stupid. But But yeah, like, yeah, man, get at me, General Mills. Like, what's going on? But regardless, I want to talk about, obviously I want to talk about growing up Christian and things like that. But something that I wanted to talk to you about as well is because you and Casey are very like you're into music a lot, right? Like
Yeah.
you're into bands and you guys, I believe correct me if I'm wrong, you guys grew up in the hardcore scene and all that stuff.
Yeah, I was like a metal and hardcore kid when I was a teenager. And Casey found it a little bit later. It was like he got into like a lot of the Christian rock, like the heavier side of Christian rock, through high school, and then in college, or like his senior year of high school, like in beginning of college is like where he really started finding more like the heavier side of things. And then he started doing music in a band in college and stuff like that. But yeah, like that's kind of the lane we fell into. And
I didn't know that.
The lane
I didn't know that Casey was in a band.
Yeah.
What did he play?
Oh, he was a vocalist for a band called The Poison Written.
That is amazing.
I'm telling you that because their Facebook is still active and anyone listening can look it up.
Oh my gosh.
I would say it was, I mean, I don't want to throw too much shade. It was cool while we were in college. It was cool. But then in hindsight, it was like not knowing much about anything. A lot of the guitar parts were like, if you were a fan of, and if you were in the metal and hardcore world, if you're just like a hardcore kid, you probably, that's a slightly different lane. But August Burns Red was like the metalcore king of the world for a while, and every local band for a minute was like basically trying to be them. So there's like heavy overlap there, but it was
Casey
cool.
Would show you a new song and be like, "This is a song I wrote," and then it'd be like, "Yeah," you're like, "That's exactly an August Burns Red song." Yeah.
No, but yeah, so he did that for a little while. You could find it. I mean, I'm putting it out there. He's probably gonna wish I didn't. I don't know.
To be fair, man, and this is coming from somebody who's been writing music since they were in 9th grade. I don't look at those years when I was a kid as like, wow, I wrote some great music. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Like,
now,
I'm embarrassed by it. You know, like
I say this like I wasn't also in a metalcore band in high school. I just get to say whatever I want because whatever I was in has been fully scrubbed from the internet.
And what did you do? Were you a vocalist?
I did the vocals for the metalcore band, and I don't have musical talent. Also, like I'm not musically inclined that trying to like
most hardcore singers really.
But like I even coming up with like vocal patterns and things like that was like overly difficult for me and then remembering it and doing it the same each time. I'm not a musically inclined person.
Sure.
It doesn't come naturally. It didn't come naturally to me. So high school was in college with some friends. We tried to get something going and nothing ever really took off, and it was for the best. I would say that was the good Lord watching out for me before he completely abandoned me. Just kidding.
Yeah. And like, so I wanted to talk about this because, what's it called? So you were the vocalist of this band, and like, it's so funny how like hardcore music back then is kind of like what Midwest emo is now. If that makes any sense, because to me, this is my opinion, but when I listen to Midwest emo, the band is so good. And then from stage left enters the singer who has never sang a note in his life. And you're like, wow, this guy sucks, but this band is so good. I'm willing to still listen to this.
There was like a whole genre of music that was like long-haired, high, really nasally high. Mm-hmm. Like it was like a falsetto type singing. It was like the higher you could go, the more like scene you were. And if you
of
were
course,
like,
which
you were
is
like
why
the scene
Craig
king.
Owens was the king of the scene, because he was a woman. I mean, like, he wasn't, but
Craig Owens was who was Craig Owens? What was he in?
Chiodos.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. And then I think Sleeping with Sirens was like, oh, it's you, that guy. He sings so. It's like, it's basically the more you sounded like a woman.
Yeah.
See, this is what's awesome about humanity and just men in general. It's like, women aren't overly welcome in that industry, but if you're a man who sings just like one, you're loved. God
That's
forbid
so funny.
you bring a woman into your band.
That is so funny. If you
you're
bring
a
a woman
man
into your band and she's not Haley Williams, you better hope that it's
you're
a man who sounds like a woman.
With like skunked scene hair, absolutely zero facial hair, wears women's jeans, and you have a crop top on, you are absolutely king of the
Tyler
scene.
Carter.
And you are.
And no shade towards Tyler Carter. I love Tyler Carter. I love all those singers. I mean, I think they're all great. Part of, what's so funny, and this kind of has nothing to do with anything, but I did want to say this. I love that era of music because I have a naturally high voice, as you just heard me sing an improvised song. And because of that being so popular, it made me feel welcomed into music. As opposed to like before then, everything was very like, I'm singing with my soul down here. And like, I'm making sure you hear my vowels down there, and I was just not that guy, like if I sang like that, it would like, I would have to sound like I was making fun of someone to sing like that, and the way that I really sing is more like a Craig Owens or a Killen Quinn or, in fact, when I went to music college at my private university, I was told that I could never lead worship because my voice was too high.
Oh my God.
And
I'm sorry, but that's a little gay, and we know how gay works. And
yeah, which is so funny because 6 months later enters Phil Wickham, the highest voice in Christian music, and people are like, we love Phil Wickham, and it's like, bitch, like I've been here this whole time. like what are you talking about? Like, but I want to talk about growing up Christian because your podcast, Growing Up Christian, not the idea, because we've been doing that this whole episode, but
hence where the name of the podcast comes from.
Exactly,
the idea,
exactly,
appropriately named, a little on the nose.
And you guys, so you and Casey met at Liberty University. You guys were in the same. You guys were in the same Cuckold 101 class, and and you were learning how to have sex with somebody else's wife while their
Jerry Jr.'s wife. Actually, we had Jerry Jr. made us have sex with his wife, and
okay,
yeah.
I mean, I would understand why you would become friends with a classmate so quickly in a situation like that.
Right, you bond for life when you Eiffel Tower the provost's wife.
It's so true. Yeah, when you when you've Eiffel Tower Jerry Falwell's wife. Yeah.
For those of you who are unaware, Jerry Falwell Jr. was the son of the man who started Liberty University, and there is a Hulu documentary series or movie, I guess, called God Forbid, and it's all about his big time sex scandal while his wife would have sex with Liberty University students, and he would watch and jerk himself to sleep.
And you know what's really sad though, and like just getting out of Sillytown.
So many of us didn't get to have sex with Jerry's wife. Exactly, getting out of Sillytown.
No, getting out of Sillytown for 1 second. The thing that's really sad about that is that that's the only one that everyone knows about. Like there's probably so many that are kept under wraps, and like there's so much money being given to people to keep their mouths shut.
Yeah. Well, the one with Giancarlo, who was the pool boy that it mostly revolves around, is like the main one. But there's also plenty of like Trey Falwell, who I didn't know. Like he didn't know my name. Everyone knew him because he walked around the school like he fucking owned the place, and he sucked. Trey, if you're listening, you sucked. I don't know. There's no other way to like get around it.
He listens every week, so you can let him know.
Yeah. And but he was in a band called Get Up Soldier, and we made plenty of jokes about that band name. And then one of his bandmates was allegedly got a blowjob from Jerry's wife. So that's also one of the stories that floats around. Yeah.
Yikes. So anyway, enter Sam and Casey. They decide to start a podcast. No, so you guys met and like you became friends, and I mean, I don't want to tell the story for you, but from my assumption is you guys met at Liberty and then went on your separate ways, and then you were just like, why aren't we still friends? And then the podcast kind of made you friends again.
Yeah, that's basically it. Him and my best friend ended up living together the second year I was there. And so a lot of like us hanging out was more adjacent. We always got along great.
Sure.
And had a lot of laughs when we were together. And then on the dorm, there were times where like him and I would end up hanging out, but he had like his circle of friends and I had mine. And I was more like with like let's talk about the Bible group. And he had his like, he had his dorm was with people he was in his band with. And so we had like our main circles were different. But then we always ended up hanging out here and there. And, but yeah, it was like years later that he ended up like work brought him out towards my way. And the guy that he lived with, who was my best friend, still lives around me. He's still one of my best friends. And he just texted and was like, hey, work brought me out your way. I'd love to like connect if you guys are still in that area. And after that, we just like stayed in touch. And then it was a few years, even a good few years after that we even ended up starting the podcast. We just would text a lot about what things were like at Liberty and like how like these world ending feelings were like so inconsequential. Like we would stay up till 3 a.m. talking about whether or not it was like a big deal that we grabbed our girlfriend's boobs or touched them, and or like right. Whether like just like the dumbest stuff. Like it was like you would have like these serious conversations about the dumbest things that felt catastrophic, and we would joke about that stuff all the time. And then it was a COVID thing where we're like, I guess now's like, what if we just kind of just started talking about whether it'd be fun to like break this, because there's a lot of like ex-evangelical post-Christian type podcasts on the internet now. And I wasn't even aware of really hardly any of them until we jumped into that pool. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh fuck, there's a lot of this stuff. So how do you delineate yourself from what's out there? And I think for us, like a lot of what's out there is like, we were in this, it was painful to shift out, and it's difficult on the other side, and there's still a lot of difficulty. There's like some trauma. It's a lot of focus on like the worst parts in the darkest corners of evangelicalism, and it's like a critique of it and why it's bad, and how do you move forward. And a lot of it has a very serious approach, and some of it still, some people have like a slightly comedic take, but it feels like it takes itself pretty seriously. And I think where Casey and I kind of came from was like, I think it's fun to joke about. I've even made jokes on this episode about like trauma, Christian trauma, church trauma. I don't feel traumatized. I was indoctrinated for sure. But then I moved on, and so did Casey, and we just thought we just like to joke about it. Jokes are fun. The funnest part about it. It's a strange upbringing. There's a lot to joke about. So we kind of wanted to take go in that lane. So the intent isn't to just like be an expose on everything that's awful about it. It's just like based on our experience, and we'll even just kind of hit on other things related to like even just current event stuff. Sometimes we'll do Bible stories. You joined us for our one on Samson. Not too long ago.
It was a great
like,
time.
We just read through the story and derail it with jokes. We have several guests. We have every other week we have a guest on, and they might be people we've just interacted with that we know have crazy stories or interesting stories. And then, we'll talk to people who have a little bit more notoriety, especially from the evangelical world, like Jennifer Knapp, or Jesse Leach from Killswitch Engage was one of our earlier guests. But then from the world of music that we were talking about earlier, like the Ongoing Concept is kind of back, putting out some new they just put out a new record, and we talked to
it's incredible.
Dawson from the Ongoing Concept. So we talked to various people from Christianity or who have had a foot in it, like comedians as well, like Amy Miller, Skylar Higley,
Nick Thune,
Doug Smith, Nick Thune,
Mike Valdes.
Mike Valdes. So we kind of hit it from all different angles. If you grew up Christian, we want to talk to you. Occasionally we'll have people on who grew up Christian and are still even in that world, and we'll have a more serious conversation. But I guess we kind of just take it where it goes. But Casey and I really don't take ourselves too seriously.
No, and that's kind of my favorite thing, is like the times that I've been on there, especially more so when I did the Samson episode, because we had already had a rapport with each other and we knew our senses of humor. We understood, when he says something like this, he's kidding, something like that. And, it's kind of like getting to do a Bible study, but getting to say what you wish that you could say at the Bible study. If my Bible study did something on Samson, for example, we would never go into a detour as good as the detour that we went on, where we were like, was the strength solely in his hair? And if so, if one of his pubes fell off, would he lose his strength? And if that pube fell off and someone ate that pube, would they then become strong?
That's right.
But the thing that I love about what that podcast is it kind of it is very much like this podcast in many ways, because when I interview certain people, just like how you interview certain people, sometimes they'll be like, man, I haven't thought about this in a long time. You know what I mean? And that's kind of why I feel such a kinship to you guys, where it's just like, as podcast creators, where it's just like, what they're doing is pretty much what I'm doing, just in it's a different branch of the same tree, if that makes any sense.
And it's so funny because I think people think they know, they remember it better than they do. And then you ask them a question and they're like, oh, fuck, I actually have not thought about that in a long time. And on the spot, they realize that they don't recall it quite as well as they might think. It definitely pulls some funny things out. We've had so many conversations where people are like, kind of seemingly remember things on the spot, where they're like, oh shit, I forgot about this time. That it's like, these are a lot of times like, it's a weird thing. Cause like even talking to someone who like might've been out for a while, and then you have these conversations and they're like, they might be still dealing with some of the negative effects of that upbringing, but they haven't thought about specific stories. And it really does allow them to recall things that they completely forgot about in a lighthearted way, where you're not like processing something overly heavy. It's just like, oh fuck, I forgot about that time at summer camp where whatever.
Yeah. And in fact, a great episode, though I kind of have to say like, oh, well, listen to the episodes with Mike Valdes because they're great. But I would say once you're done with that, or let's just say you don't want to listen to those at all, and you just want a great episode to listen to where it's both equally gratifying yet it's still funny, the Jennifer Knapp episode. I thought that episode was perfect because I loved it. Because it is so much so where she is so herself that whole time. And she is completely okay with the two of you being yourselves. And Casey's going to say his weird, funny stuff sometimes. and sometimes it's really out of pocket.
Very out of pocket.
Yeah, but she's game. She's game the whole time. And then she just goes back to like, yeah, but that really kind of was a weird time when I was on Larry King.
Yeah. What's special about her is she's written like a book, a memoir about her experience in her life. And she's someone who knows her story. And it's almost like it's an easy interview. You ask a question and you have like 10 minutes of content right there. She's going to give you 10 minutes of like well thought out, not like, oh shit, I guess, let me think about that. Like, no, you ask her a question and she knew what she was going to say. And it was well articulated, well thought out. And it was special. It was like a very fun episode. Because like I said, with so many of our guests, like, I guess I haven't really thought about that in a long time. And I didn't realize how much I'd forgotten. But with her, it's like, it's such a deeply ingrained part of who she is and that experience coming up in CCM, contemporary Christian music, for having to play that game.
I actually just realized this as we were talking. For the listeners who may not know who Jennifer Knapp is, which may be a wide variety of our audience, Jennifer Knapp was a singer-songwriter in the contemporary Christian music scene. She was only in the scene for like 3 years, like not very long.
It was less time than I had remembered.
Yeah, it was less time than I had remembered too, because when it came to her music, like that CCM machine wrung her out to dry, man. Like when it came to like those Christian songs. And anyway, she got out of that because she just didn't quite believe, in that being in that kind of world, which I completely understand. And also, she was out as I'm trying to say this in the most like PC way, I guess, but she came out as a lesbian as well, and that was a no-go for a lot of Christians. And
most of them.
Yeah, for most of them, of course.
But
in
the CCM world, there's plenty of Christian branches that don't have that hang up, but in conservative Christianity, evangelicalism, and contemporary Christian music, it's an absolute no-go.
Yeah, it's wild, man. I mean, I remember listening to a podcast where Aaron Gillespie was talking about how he was doing his second record, I believe, with the CCM market. Aaron Gillespie is the drummer of Under Oath, and he has also done some solo projects. There was a time where he did worship music, and he was doing his second album with the giant contemporary Christian music machine that is, Capitol Records or whatever it is, but their Christian division. And they literally sat him down and were like, basically played him like a Casting Crowns, Mercy Me type of song. And they were like, this is what you need to be writing, because your audience is soccer moms who have a minivan and their husband, and literally this is what he said, and their husband is working all the time or treating them poorly, and they just need something to believe in. And that's who you're writing for. Yeah, and he was rough. Like, I have got to get out of here. And that's what made him stop writing worship music, was that meeting. And so if that meeting is even a hair of what Jennifer Knapp went through, because she went through a lot more than that. But I mean, that's enough, for somebody to be like, I don't need to be in that. But like what Jennifer went through is like insane, and she's not the only one. She's not the only one, which is wild. There's still a lot of Christian people, or not Christian people, Christian artists who are playing the game because that is their paycheck. And there are many people that I can name right now, but probably won't, because I don't want to get in trouble or get sued or whatever. But like, I mean, there are plenty of people that I know for a fact are not Christians, and they're just fooling people. They're doing They're pulling the old Donald Trump, if you will, where like, you know, Christian voters are like, well, I'm going to vote for him because he's a Christian. And I'm like, dude, he is doping you. This guy is freaking doping you. He's not a Christian.
The music industry, like the Christian metalcore world, is like all the Christian bands, the Christian metalcore bands were like, there was like one person who was still in it kind of, but like most of them were just like not, and they just, that was where they could excel. And you're like, you find that out too. Like you find out that like in all these organizations and areas in which it's like propagating quote unquote Christianity, it's like so many people are on the fence. At least
this is just my opinion. I think Christian music is kind of useless. I think it's pretty stupid, to be honest. I think music should just be music, and like that's it.
Yeah,
but
it's a marketing. I mean, if you're using it for music, it's a marketing term.
It's neither here nor there, but yeah, that is how I feel. Like music should just be music, and like whatever it is that you believe. Like, I mean, there's so many bands in metal specifically. There's so many bands that are Christian bands, or that are Christians in a band or whatever, and so many metalheads still like them. Why? Because they're a great band. You know, at the end of the day, nobody was complaining about For Today. You know,
and Solid State really was like the game changer. Like they signed bands and it reinvented like metalcore, and it changed the way that people were doing music for years to come. I mean, what they did was phenomenal. No one can shit on August Burns Red. Like, and what they did to music, because every local band tried to sound like them, and you knew they did something special. Like, they were,
Casey was one of them.
Yeah.
I kind of want to wrap things up now, and I need to ask you these last two questions. And the first question that I'm wanting to ask you is, what advice would you give to your younger self if you could talk to him right now?
Just like this, knock off the certainty act. Like, I think I truly was as certain as I made myself out to be about everything then. It's weird growing up in the world we did, is like everything boils down to whether or not people spend an eternity in hell. And you can either joke around and not tell your friends about that, or you can try to save them. And it spearheads a good time constantly. And when I started making friends outside of Christianity, where like in Christianity, I was comfortable. I'm like, oh, I don't have to worry about these people, so I can be myself. But when I met people outside of it, it was like, well, now we're up till 3 a.m. having conversations about what we believe. And my friends have some memories about that aren't as bad as the ones I have. They were like, it was the first time that I actually met someone who had a different perspective that I felt like was an honest player. And I think they give me more credit than I would give myself. But like, there were so many times where like we were having a good time, and then I would stop and think about whether or not, oh, well, maybe this isn't, I don't want them to mistake this or mistake me for not being serious about my faith. So maybe I should be a little bit more serious about this. And it really just was like, it ruined my ability to just be a fucking person. And that's what I think a lot of people who grew up in that type of Christianity, who are like hell bent on proselytizing their unsaved friends, really misses out on. On a less serious note, say maybe just jerk off a little bit more, you know?
Oh my god.
Why not?
I want to go at this question from a different angle with you, because Christianity and being a part of a religion for so long really makes you feel like you're a part of a gang almost, you know?
Sure.
Like you're not Sam anymore. Now you're the Sharks, you know? And the truth is, like, you're not that. Like, you're Sam. You know what I mean? And there's something different about Sam, and there's something different about Mike. There's something different about Casey, something different about whoever, yet we're all Sharks or post Sharks or whatever, you know? So let me just ask you, what do you like? religion, Christianity, everything aside, just human being, what would that kid think of who you are?
Oh, maybe they'd be a little jealous of like that.
Yeah.
That freedom to be yourself, and not having to just like feel that conflict about, because I mean, even as a kid, I remember thinking like, this can't be a big deal. I remember the conversations that I would have with my best friend about like, because he was a Christian too, and we hung out with all the same kids, and it was like, we would just like we would spend hours talking about whether or not it was okay to like, well, I guess it's okay if we like swear around each other, but we probably shouldn't swear around them because that might hurt our witness, because for some reason that matters. And it's like, and you would just like run in circles and talk for hours and hours and hours about what you should or shouldn't do. And it's like, in some ways it was all like just kind of hacky. Like,
sure.
You're like, is like, if we weren't talking about that, what else would we be talking about? I don't know. But it's like, I guess what I'm trying to articulate is like, maybe there was some fun in that debate for us and because of how we grew up, but like, to be so stuck on something that really didn't matter at all. I think it felt a little bit like walking around in handcuffs. So I think there'd be a little bit of jealousy about like, oh, this person feels like maybe they can just be themselves.
I think that's a great answer, because it now tells you as an adult that you have found that freedom. You know what I mean? And so because of that, like that's an amazing thing, is to be able to feel free spiritually. And yeah, man, that's something, especially growing up Christian and all that stuff, that's something that you strive for, because it's just like, you're scared of everything. Like you're scared that everything's going to end, and like one wrong turn is going to make the world blow up.
Yeah.
And when you get older and you find out, when you learn that freedom to just release, just let go, man. Like, if it all falls apart, it falls apart. Like, let it be, and that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. And I think that that's a great way to answer that question. So that's it, man. That's all the questions I have for you. Sam Shipman, everybody.
Did I get them all right though? I got to make sure I got them all right.
You did. You got them all right. You got them all right because you answered them correctly to who you are.
Okay.
But
I don't like that wishy-washy postmodern nonsense, but it does make me feel good about myself, so I'll accept it.
Yeah, I agree. Let everyone know where they can find you and the podcast online. Actually, before you do that, I'm going to bring the band up.
Oh, yeah.
And you can go ahead.
Well, we're on, I mean, anywhere you get your podcasts, it's Growing Up Christian. You can go to our Podbean page. Apparently I'm going through puberty again, so that's appropriate for the musical background here.
Yeah.
And then as far as social media, Instagram is where I give a shit and nothing else matters. I am on Twitter, and that's a really like a place where, enjoyment goes to die. So I
agreed.
Don't spend a lot of time there. But follow us on Instagram. That's where we post anything at all.
Yeah, and that's at Growing Up Christian, right?
Yeah, at Growing Up Christian Podcast. And then if you want to check out the episode that we spent a little bit of time talking about to see if you even give a shit and we're worth a follow, that's episode 126 with Jennifer Knapp. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you can, on the search bar, you can search my name if you want to have some laughs or just find out more about me and my Christian upbringing. and all that kind of stuff. Now, for me, you can pretty much find everything you need at thekidfromup.com. You will be able to find all of my dates, the podcast link, any comedy clips or music clips. My album is there as well. And you can follow me on Instagram at Mike Valdes. You can follow my TikTok at official Mike Valdes, I believe. And that's it, man. This has been a great episode. Don't lose your sense of childlike wonder, everybody. Have a great week. Thank you so much for listening. Bye, besties.